This is a Crack House Chronicles production.
Welcome to the Crack House Chronicles, your favorite true crime podcast. I am Donnie, and with me is a man that says, if at first you don't succeed, go buy another beer. It's Dale.
Always. You should have bought two in the first place.
Yeah, or 2 cases.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever you're going to get extra.
Yeah, make sure you got enough.
Yeah, because you don't need to be going back.
No.
You're a little sketchy trying to go back.
Yeah, take care of it at one time and be done with it.
Taking care of business.
That's right.
Going on?
What's going on with you?
Same old, same old.
Same old, same old.
Back in here and we getting ready to do it down.
Yeah, we got a good episode this week.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a little bit different for us. This is one of them that, a lot of times we say, it's hard to do stuff because there ain't a ton of information on it. So we're going to see if we can pull it off today.
Yeah, you got any good shout-outs anybody want to mention?
Well, how about that?
Oh, Dale's still got that clap.
We got it going on over here. We have a brand new Apple 5-star podcast review. Yes. And this comes all the way from Freeport, Florida. And this comes from I Am Tyler Pope. And it goes, the famous crack house, ! So that's cool right off the bat. What's up, guys? It's Tyler Pope from Freeport, Florida. Just a small town in the Panhandle. I started following y'all a little over 2 years now. I found about the crack hose. Okay, I'm going to read it just like it is.
Read it like he wrote it.
I started following y'all a little over 2 years now. I found about the crack hose when y'all covered the Kimberly Lauren Raymer case, which is not far from where I'm at. I've been listening ever since. Keep doing what y'all are doing. I'm proud of you guys and how far you've came since the first podcast. Are y'all going to drop new merch soon? Anyway, thanks some lots. We appreciate you taking the time to type that in there and give us a little 5-star. We really, really appreciate that. It comes out and helps everyone follow us.
It really does. Help people find us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we are working on new merch, man, but we got so much stuff going on, it's hard to find time to get it all done, but we're getting there.
Researching these cases, man, it takes a lot.
It does.
Yeah, it really does.
Trying to get some stuff done. Trying to get some stuff done for you guys.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if anybody else wants to be like I Am Tyler Pope, he's just got a weird name. I wonder what his first name is. I Am?
I think so, or I Am. It's kind of like Ian, I-I-N, but it's a M.
Middle name's Tyler.
M. Tyler Pope.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Man, I should have read it like that the first time.
But if anybody else wants to be like I Am Tyler Pope, you can go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star rate and review, and we'll give you a big old shout out when we get notifications.
You think this Freeport place is that close to Dozier? It's in the Panhandle.
I know, it's probably right there.
I wonder if he got threatened. You're going to Dozier when you get kind of like going to Broughton up here, right?
Yeah, up here, you always got threatened as a kid. Parents say, you're going to put me in Broughton.
Yep, you're going to Broughton.
Yeah.
I don't know. The two choices, I think I would pick Broughton.
Yeah, I think every place has
their own threatener.
Yeah.
Straighten up, you're going up
I'm going to send you here.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, enough is enough.
Yeah, that's right. But all right, Dale, after this short break, man, we're going to get going on this episode.
Let's do it.
All right, Dale, we are back, man.
We are. Batman, wait. Is that like Batman?
But it's back, man. But yeah, we are back, man.
We are.
But let me just say this right here. We said before, doing cases, it's all about finding information.
It is.
And the case we're doing this week, there's not a lot of information on it.
And what there is sketchy at best.
Yes. And there's a couple other podcasts that have covered this, and I'm not going to down any podcast.
No.
I mean, they're really good and respectable podcasts that have covered this.
For sure.
And what they've done is, they've just done with what information is out there.
Well, the thing is, we're local, and it's local to us. So when we're listening to them, it's like, wait a minute, that's not right. But it's mainly not a fact thing, but a location thing.
Yeah.
Just because you don't know. If you don't know, you don't know.
You're reading just what's been put out there.
Correct.
And you just, like you said, you just don't know.
Right.
So we're doing this week, and we've done a deep dive on this, and we've got a lot of information. We're going to try to present it the best we can.
We did a deep dive in a shallow pool.
Very true. We was all over the bottom of that shallow pool, man.
You.
Yes. But we're talking about a guy by the name of Phillip Lee Ingle.
Correcto.
Yeah, and just a little bit of background on Phillip Ingle. Dale, he was born on August the 7th, 1961, in Lincoln County, North Carolina.
Right over the line.
Yeah, and like you said, this is very local to us.
Very, very.
Yeah. And Philip, from the early age, man, he had a pretty troubled childhood.
He did.
He did. According to some family friends, his mother and father split just right after he was born.
Right.
And his mom was only around just a short period of time.
And she had a lot of problems going on too. I think he witnessed her going through some bad times.
Yes, he did. It was reported that he had been sexually abused by one of his cousins at an early age.
I think he's seen his mom going through some stuff as far as some substance stuff and maybe even some depression, maybe even some suicidal tendencies and that kind of thing. So seeing that kind of thing at very young can't be easy, especially if you got other stuff going on like this cousin sex stuff.
I know, man. Can't imagine what he was going through. But when he was young,
I went way young.
Yeah, at 5 or 6 years old, it's been reported both ways, but somewhere around 5 or 6 years old, he was treated for some psychiatric issues.
Yeah, because he had attempted to kill himself.
Yes.
Like he tried to hang himself, right?
Yeah, from a tree.
Yeah, I mean, at 5 or 6, that's
rough, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for us to hear stuff like this in stories of these kind of folks, but that's really young.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really young.
Yeah, it is. And there was another time I don't know when it happened, but it was reported that he had tried to kill himself again. He laid down in a highway and wanted to get run over.
Yeah.
He's got some stuff going on in his mind. I don't know what it is.
It's not good.
No, it ain't. And then when he was a teenager, he actually got a little bit of jail time for breaking and entering and assault.
Yeah, that was in the early 80s, yeah.
Yeah. And then when he was 18 years old, Dale, he tried to kill himself again. He actually shot himself in the stomach.
That's rough.
Yeah, but he survived. I mean, he lived.
He did.
So this boy's got a lot going on.
Yes.
A lot of mental stuff,
He's got a lot of problems, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we can't say that enough, and this is going to play into part of this.
Yeah.
But in December of 1986, he was in a pretty drunken state, and he was actually sent to Broughton Hospital. You know, we mentioned this at the beginning of the show. And this is a mental hospital in Burke County.
Right.
Just right up the road from where we are, about 27 miles from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was released from there 5 days later and then sent up to Black Mountain, where they have a 28-day treatment program.
That's more of a rehab, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. For rehab for drugs and things like that.
Substance, alcohol, whatever.
Yeah. So he's got that going on.
Right.
When Philip got out, he was working several jobs. He was working at the Doran Mill there in Cherryville, North Carolina, which is right across the county line from us.
The other way.
To the east from where we are here in Cleveland County.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, then we're moving up to July the 28th, 1991, and this is on a Sunday. This is when Fred and Margaret Davis, they lived in Hollis, North Carolina.
Right.
This is in Rutherford County, just to the west of us right here from Cleveland County.
Yeah, it's kind of, they're all three lined up. It's Rutherford County, then Cleveland County, then Gaston County, and that is from west to east.
That's right. But they were living in Rutherford County, just right across the county line from Cleveland County.
Correct.
And they went to church that day, and when they got out of church, they were given a ride home.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got home, Fred Davis, he went out in his garden doing his little thing. He was going to gather some vegetables and stuff and, deliver them out like he usually does to people.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a retired mechanic from the State Highway Department and done this farming stuff on the side.
Yep. And Margaret, she worked part-time for Jenkins Foods.
Yeah, making liver mush.
That's right.
Man.
And if anybody don't know what liver mush is, it's a local staple right here where we're from.
You know what I was thinking about that today? I was like, man, if I first heard about liver mush today, it'd probably be hard to get me to eat it because I'm picky. But growing up on it and I knowing what it is, just you don't get much better.
That's good stuff.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But she worked at this Jenkins Food part-time help make liver mush.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Now, later that day, Kathy Davis, the Davis's daughter-in-law, spoke to Margaret Davis, and she even saw Fred when he stopped by their house to deliver some vegetables. Now, their daughter, her name was Ruth Melton. She had saw her father that afternoon in the field near his home and also spoke with her mom at their home. And Miss Melton again stopped by the Davis's home around 6 p.m. to borrow a vacuum cleaner, but there was no one at home. But the back door was unlocked, so she picked up this vacuum cleaner and left.
Yeah, I think she had asked him about borrowing it before, but forgot to take it, right?
Yeah, that's right. So at some time between 6 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. that evening, that Sunday evening, this is when the guy we're talking about, Phillip Ingle, he was driving around this Hollis area, around the victim's home. And he knew the Davises because he had actually rented a mobile home from them in 1987.
Right.
Yeah, he had actually lived there with his wife, Sarah, at the time. And he went to the Davises' house, and he drove his car around to the back of the house. That's when he parked his car, and Dale, he took an axe handle from his car, and he went into the house.
He just opened up the back door and walked right in.
Yeah, it was unlocked. And Margaret Davis, she was in the kitchen, and this is when Phillip, he approached her from behind, and Dale, he began to beat her on the head with this axe handle.
Just for the hell of it.
Yeah, until she fell to the floor.
Yeah.
And after doing this, he went into the den, and this is where Fred was sitting in his recliner watching TV.
Yeah.
Now, Fred, he was a little hard of hearing.
Yeah, so I think he had the TV a little loud, right?
He did. He had it turned way up.
Yeah.
So he couldn't hear what had happened in the kitchen.
Right. So he's getting caught by surprise as well.
Yeah, he's attacked from behind and is beat in the head with this axe handle. Can't even imagine, man.
No, just out of the blue. You know, and a lot of people make a big deal about doors being unlocked, but you know, if you're home on Sunday afternoon, especially if you live out in the country, you're not really somebody's going to lock the doors 24/7.
Yeah,
not around here.
But Phillip, he killed them both, and then left.
Yeah,
but he did take Margaret's pocketbook that had a billfold inside, and he also took a like a floral print dress.
What the hell for?
I don't know why he would take that.
That's so weird.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But the Davises were found the next day. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when she was going to, the daughter was, what's her name? When Kathy was going to return the vacuum cleaner, and she actually had pulled up in the yard, and her two kids had jumped out to run in the house to see Grandma and Grandpa.
Yeah.
So when they walked in, they're the ones who actually had to see this first.
Yeah, they saw them dead.
Yeah, and it was probably not a very good scene.
No.
So there was blood all over the walls, the ceilings, everywhere. You can imagine, because he had hit them a dozen times or more with that axe handle.
Yeah. But Phillip Ingle knew this couple. I mean, he had rented from them.
Right.
But there was an autopsy that was done on Fred and Margaret Davis, and it was conducted on July the 31st of 1991. And there were 6 major lacerations on the scalp and face of Margaret Davis.
Damn.
And an internal examination revealed contusions, hemorrhaging into the brain, and multiple skull fractures. Also, there were wounds to her left elbow and right hand that could have been sustained when she tried maybe to defend herself, or
I'm sure,
or when she fell.
Well, I believe probably one or two of them had to be like, I mean, you're going to put your hands up or try to. Unless you just get knocked out cold with the first one, and that's the only thing you can hope for. But if you hit her 6 or 7 more times, I'm pretty sure she wasn't out with the first shot.
Probably not.
Damn axe handle.
Yeah. But an external examination of Fred showed blood and brain tissue on his head, face, and clothing. Both of his eyes had been blackened, and he had bled out into his eye. And his skull bones had been thoroughly fractured and pressed inward into his brain. And there were 12 lacerations on his face and scalp, and he wore dentures, and they were protruding from his mouth. His little left finger was almost completely torn from his hand, and his left ring finger had abrasions on it. And there were wounds to Fred's hand that could have been sustained as he was trying to defend himself, or could have been caused by his hand. Maybe he had his hand resting on top of his head when he was attacked.
Could have.
Yeah. His hand was hit. His hand was struck when it was on his head.
Especially if the TV was on the opposite wall from where he came from and he was looking away.
Yeah.
And he could have just right over the top of the head, right, never seen it coming.
Yeah.
Damn.
But they did determine that these injuries could have been caused by the blunt instrument like an axe handle.
You think?
Yeah. But after the couple were killed, this is when Phillip Ingle left the house, and like we said, he took Margaret's pocketbook and this floral patterned dress that belonged to her. And then he went to an area that was about 3 miles away from their home, and he discarded the dress, and he set fire to the pocketbook and its contents, which is weird.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around why would he take the dress?
That's just weird.
I mean, I can see grabbing the pocketbook if you was like either going to rob or even try to make it look like it may have been a robbery or at least, something to that effect. But the dress is just weird.
Yeah. But after he set fire to the pocketbook and its contents, he then left the area. And he returned to the area sometime later and picked up the pocketbook and threw it and the axe handle into a creek.
Do we know where he was living at this point?
He was living in Lincoln County, the little community of Vale. Because he was living at this country land, a mobile home park there in Vale.
So you think he was just up riding around and he went by there because he knew these people?
I think he did. Because he knew them. He had rented from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So he had drove all the way across Cleveland County into there and then done this and then went back across. 25
miles
Yeah.
across the county.
Right.
Into Rutherford County. Now, after he had left and it was away from this area where the pocketbook was left burning, it was spotted by a local resident who notified the local sheriff department. And by the time the resident and the sheriff's deputy returned to the spot, Phillip Ingle had already retrieved the pocketbook. He went back and got it. And the deputy did discover the dress that had belonged to Margaret Davis. Now, items found in the pocketbook after its recovery by police at the site where it was partially burned were identified as items that would have normally been carried by Margaret Davis. And the pocketbook itself was identified as one that belonged to her.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. But the police investigation of the Davis murders didn't lead to an arrest for several weeks. And during this time, the police, they were focusing on a guy that lived in this Hollis area, and his name was Joey James Melton.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the son-in-law of the Davises.
Right.
Now, he'd had a little bit of trouble. At first, the Davises, they objected to him marrying their daughter.
Yeah, well, he had some issues when he was younger. I think he had some substance abuse issues and
maybe some mental health stuff going on too.
Right. But and they did object to the proposal, but once they seen that the daughter was all in, Ruth, then they were like, they helped him get a trailer at first and then helped him actually get into a house.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they had this big blockade on him or anything.
They didn't totally shun him out.
Right. I mean, they didn't like it at first, but he's like, it's their daughter, so they're going to support.
Yeah. But they said that he'd had some personal issues with the Davises. And this is when the law enforcement, they honed in on him pretty quick. And
this is kind of one of them, they just kind of blinded straight in, didn't they?
Yeah.
They had their blinders up and was tunnel vision right on this fella.
Totally focused on Joey Melton.
Yeah, and hard. Yeah, they didn't make it any secret that they were looking at him.
Yeah, and they weren't looking anywhere else.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They kind of honed in on him, and then it's like, well, this has got to be him.
Yeah.
Who else would have done this? Which, I kind of get in a way, but not in a way, because small community, and you're like, okay, well, they had some issues, so, who else is going to kill these two old people that everybody loved?
Yeah, everybody has to be questioned.
Right.
Yeah. But they hit him pretty hard, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of out of the blue, and it's kind of like, they have no issues with anybody except this one fellow.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I kind of get why they're looking at him, but he could have went about it a lot better way.
Yeah. But during this investigation, there wasn't an arrest or anything. And during this time, this was mid-August of 1991, Phillip Ingle, he had visited the friend of his name was Jeff Hauser.
Mm-hmm.
And during a conversation with Hauser, Phillip Ingle made a statement. He told him, he said, man, I killed 2 people. I beat them to death.
Yeah.
And then Phillip asked Hauser if he knew of anyone that he wanted killed.
Yeah. You want me to get rid of anybody for you?
Yeah. And Jeff just sort of jokingly responded by indicating that he did and pointed to his neighbor's house.
Yeah. Just being funny because he didn't believe this guy. He just thought it was just a big joke.
Yeah. But Ingle then began to question about his neighbors that he said he wanted killed.
Yeah, he's wanting details.
Yeah, so Hauser, he sort of backed off of this. He doubled down and he told Phillip that he was just kidding about this.
Yeah, he's a real good guy.
Yeah, and he's a real big guy. And he was always heavily armed.
Yeah, you don't really want to do that, but I was just kidding anyway. You need to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, but Phillip told him, he said, man, that doesn't matter. They'll never see me coming. All I need is an axe handle. And when Hauser told Phillip Ingle just to forget about it, Phillip responded, well, man, I wouldn't be telling you this, but I know I can trust you.
Right. This Hauser guy, he's like a truck driver, right?
He was, yeah.
Long haul truck driver.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, some weeks later, it was around the 10th or 12th of September of 1991, Phillip Ingle, he returned to Jeff Hauser's residence.
Mm-hmm.
And this time, Jeff noticed that he had a black eye.
He did.
Yep. And another visitor at Jeff's home, his name was Steve White, he asked Phillip about the black eye. And he said that he just fell and hit a doorknob. And it's been stated in other places that he was on a trampoline or something.
Yeah, I've heard several different versions of that. One was he went to work the next day and was telling people that he had fell on the trampoline, and another version was he stayed out of work for 3 or 4 days and went and then said he just got drunk and blacked out and didn't know how he did it.
Yeah.
So take it for what you want.
Yep. But this Steve White didn't believe that to be the truth, and he even told him so. And after asking Jeff Hauser if he was still having trouble with his neighbor, Phillip even said, "Man, I'll take care of it for you." He said, "I'll kill his whole family. I'll get a stick and I'll beat him to death." And Phillip even went on to say, "I love to watch people dying in agony, pain, suffering."
Jesus.
Yeah, that's crazy. And this is right here in our area.
Yeah. No, not far at all.
But at the time of this second visit to Jeff Hauser's residence, Phillip Ingle had recently committed another double murder in Gaston County.
Yeah, this is on the September 9th. So
Yeah.
He was telling them this right after this other one had happened, but they didn't know it yet.
No, they didn't know it. Phillip had actually broken into a rural home of an elderly couple named E.Z. and Sarah Willis.
Cool name.
This was in Gaston County over in Cherryville.
Cherryville.
Yeah, Cherryville.
If you hear anywhere else, it's going to be Cherryville. But if you're from around here, if you ask anybody who lives there, it is not Cherryville, it's Cherryville.
That's right.
Sorry.
But
not sorry.
But Cherryville is in Gaston County, which is on the east side of Cleveland County where we are.
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, he'd went in and beat both of them to death. And he used a tire iron this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, violent.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so bad that when the police found them, they thought at first that they had been shot. There were such big holes knocked in their skull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very violent guy.
Well, what he did, Phillip Ingle had actually crawled in through an unlatched window of the home and beat him to death.
Good Lord.
But E.Z., he was 70 at the time. He actually fought back with his cane.
Yeah. Even though he walked with a cane, he was still pretty vigilant about doing stuff. I mean, he had been working on the roof on a shop and some other stuff, so it's not like they were just sitting around waiting, you know.
Yeah, they could get around pretty good.
Yeah. So he tried. He fought back a little bit, and that's where the black eye come from.
Yeah.
And the gash on the face.
Yeah, he was messed up pretty good.
Yeah.
But like you said, these injuries to Phillip Ingle were bad enough that he had to end up skipping work.
Yeah.
But he killed them both with this tire iron.
So the next day, Sheila Willis Hauser, who was professionally a 34-year-old accountant, but also was the daughter of E.Z. and Sarah, had went over to see her parents the next morning, and that's when she had found the battered bodies laying there. Said she just can't. She said, quote, "You can't imagine what it was like, and I haven't been in that house since. I just can't go in."
No, heck no.
He said, things like this, they just don't happen in Cherryville.
Mm-mm.
It was awful.
But
I can't imagine that, man.
Yeah, but Phillip Ingle, he was actually a distant cousin to these Willises.
Yeah.
He knew them.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird so far, and it's such a violent way to do it. There's a lot of killers, shoot and do this and do that, but to take it physically and do it with your hands, up close and personal, it's a bad dude.
Yeah, but like you said, they actually thought this couple had been shot because of the
massive wounds, yeah,
to the head were so bad.
Yeah,
yeah, and Sheila Hauser was hearing everything from different places. At one time, she'd even heard that her mother had been raped.
Yeah.
But
raped and then mutilated, because this is kind of like the satanic panic thing, and they were saying that there were these weird people over there and they were doing these rituals and all that stuff, and it was all untrue.
Yeah, she hadn't been raped, or the Davis's woman, Margaret Davis, hadn't been raped either.
Right.
So there was none of that. It was no sexual component to it at all. It was just a beating and a killing.
Yeah.
But at this time, Dale, there were people in this area, they were scared to death.
They were.
Yeah.
And now this is the second set of murders, so that they're still going back over here checking on Joey James.
Yeah, they're going back to him, and they question him more.
Yeah. So
yeah.
They're waiting, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah.
This is the same thing, same MO, beat to death, elderly couple. So, yeah, they're right back on his case, hard and heavy.
Mm-hmm. and wondering why if he would have done this at all, if he would have been involved with it.
Yeah, he's like, there's no way I could do that. You know, and even when they were questioning him at one time, he's like, especially about the Davises, there's no way I could have done that. And if I did do that, you think I'd let my wife go back over there, which is their daughter? You think I would let her go back over there and find that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all is just they're just on him hard and heavy. That's the only person they're actually looking at, I believe.
Mm-hmm. But during this time, like I said, people were scared to death.
Oh yeah.
The stores couldn't keep ammunition. The stores, I guess hardware stores were selling out of deadbolts
and locks, all kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah, and there was another couple. Their names were Douglas Shank Tips. He was 84. He went by Shank, and he'd been married to his wife Elizabeth for many, many years, several decades.
Oh yeah.
And they lived over in Pea Ridge of Catawba County. This was about 20 miles outside of Cherville.
Okay.
And they lived in a mobile home. They were just doing their life, but they were scared to death because they thought somebody was focusing on older people going in.
Couples, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
he started sleeping with his loaded rifle beside the bed.
Yeah, he was armed to the hilt.
Yeah.
And there was sometime in the middle of the night, they were in bed asleep. This was around September the 19th. This is when Shank Tips, he heard a noise, and he felt a hand on his leg.
Right.
And that's when he grabbed the gun or the rifle and just started
shooting
blindly in the dark. And one of the bullets struck his wife.
Yeah, it was his wife. It wasn't an intruder.
Yeah, and she just gotten up to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, she come back by and just put her hand on his leg, and it scared him, and he just started shooting and ended up accidentally killing his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of this panic.
Yeah. Everybody's terrified.
But this Shank, he was just a good old guy. I think he run a juke joint at one time and made a little homemade liquor and stuff, sold it and
selling some white liquor over there.
Yeah, but they were just living their life and just scared to death because somebody thought somebody was going to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But shortly after his wife had died, I think it was 6 months after she had died, I think he died too.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, he was
depressed.
Probably. Could have been.
Well, I'm sure. Broken-hearted, man. That'd be rough. It'd be hard to live with.
But, several weeks passed and the police found no evidence of linking this Joey James Melton, the son-in-law of the Davises, to these killings. And the pressure on him seemed to ease, but on September the 9th, the day of the second murders, the Willises, investigators, they came flocking back asking questions to Melton. And the very next day, Joey Melton wrote a suicide note, Dale.
Yeah, he did more than that.
Yeah, he put a shotgun to his chest and pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Man, this poor guy.
This poor guy didn't do nothing.
No, sure didn't. But the sheriff's department nor Ruth Davis Melton would reveal what the suicide note said. Nobody knew what it said, but just a few people.
Yeah, a few people. There's someone. I think the only thing that ever leaked out was he was just wanting to make sure his kids were taken care of because he had 2 kids, and so now this poor woman here, she's lost her parents, and now they've badgered her husband till he just couldn't take it anymore, and he's killed himself. So she's lost her parents and her husband, and these kids have lost their dad and their grandparents over such tragic, man.
I know. That's another death because
all this mess.
Phillip Ingle. But people around this area, the Hollis area where the Davises were killed, man, they were just saying that Joey Melton was just a good guy and the law killed him.
Yeah.
From badgering him so much.
Yeah, I get that. He's like, he couldn't take it. Like you said, he had issues before, so he probably wasn't the most stable person.
Probably not.
And then that's a lot of grief to put on somebody, man. You're just basically accusing him of killing his father-in-law and his mother-in-law, and I don't know.
Yeah.
He just couldn't take it. And then when they tried to pin this other stuff on him, he's like, hell, I'm out.
Yeah. But after these second murders of the Willises in Cherville, this is when Jeff Hauser, the friend of Phillip Ingle,
right,
he came forward.
Yeah, when he heard about the second set, he's like, wait a minute, this sounds awful darn, just like the story I've been getting from Phillip.
Yeah, so that's when he went to the law enforcement and he told them what he knew.
Yes.
Yeah, and they went and picked Phillip Ingle up.
Well, they quickly discovered that the set of fingerprints that they found at the Willis house were Ingle's.
Yeah, because Phillip Ingle had been arrested before.
Yes.
So they had his prints on file.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when they picked
him up quickly.
Yeah, and they took him in.
Yes, they did, for some questioning. We got some questions, sir.
That's right.
And as soon as they got him in and started his arraignment, he confessed to everything. He just gave a detailed account of, what happened at both crime scenes and directed the police to where to find a tire iron, which he said was in the trunk of his car.
Mm-hmm.
So I just carry it around with me in case I need it, I guess.
Yeah, but he threw that axe handle he killed the Davises with. He threw it in the creek, and it never was found. Yeah, but he was telling the investigators that the people he killed, these elderly people, they were demons, and they had demons' red eyes.
They had red eyes, wings, and tails.
Yeah, horns and tails.
Oh, yeah.
And he claimed that he believed that he was doing God's work by killing them.
Yeah, buddy.
And before he was arrested, Phillip Ingle confessed to a friend, this Jeff Hauser, like we said, that he enjoyed watching people die in agony.
In agony.
Yeah.
So, you know about this damn demon stuff.
Yeah, so they going to take Phillip Ingle to trial.
Yes.
And there was a counselor believed that Ingle was mentally ill, and he ruled competent to stand trial.
Well, I mean, he right after the second murders, he did try to go and commit himself.
He did.
And there was another time, you know, like he reached out for help. I mean, it was a little bit late, but, you know, it's just, you know.
I think he knew that he had some trouble and he needed some help.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, you know, he tried to check himself into a mental hospital, but instead of getting help, they basically told him he needed to go to a private facility, and instead of doing that, he just went home.
Yeah, but he was ruled competent to stand trial.
So I wonder if he, when he went to try to get this help at the mental hospital, I wonder if he was drunk again, you know, because he was really an alcoholic.
Probably.
And I wonder if that's what they told him he needed to go get help at the private facility for.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, you know, is the drinking masking the mental problems when he goes to try to help himself. Maybe when he gets drunk, he starts thinking, man, I need some help. And then when he goes there, they're like, wait, this guy's drunk. He needs a different kind of help than than mental help.
Yeah.
But basically, I think he was just a victim of both.
Very true.
And it was masking it when they, you know, or they just weren't paying attention enough to see it.
Yeah.
So he would do this stuff and then know it was wrong and then try to get help, and then they would send him away.
Yeah. But he was ruled competent to stand trial, and he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
But he was convicted on 1 count of first-degree burglary and 4 counts of first-degree murder.
Right.
And during Phillip Ingle's trial, the prosecutors presented evidence that the murders were carefully planned, and several doctors testified that Phillip Ingle did not appear to be insane at the time of the murders.
Right. Well, I think if this whole demon story is what got him. If he would have said, listen, I just did. I know I'm a sick person. Blah blah blah.
I need help.
You know that, and I'm not saying that would have got him out of it. I'm just saying when you flip the switch, I'm doing God's work, and you're all of a sudden they're on supernatural. You know, it looks a little sketchy to everybody.
Oh yeah.
Especially when he knew these people. He'd been renting from them. I mean, come on. You know, they're not red-eyed demons.
Yeah, he knew them.
Yeah.
But during Phillip's trial, prosecutors presented evidence that the murders were carefully planned, and the doctors testified that Phillip Ingle did not appear to be insane at the time of the murders. And after the jury deliberated, I think they deliberated for like a little over 2 hours.
Well, I mean, the trial began on February 8th. This is in 1993. And then by February 17th, they found him guilty.
Yes.
On all counts.
Yeah, and he was sentenced to death.
He was.
And, you know, he's automatically granted appeals.
Yeah.
But he waived all of his appeals.
Well, they took that first one because it's automatic.
Yeah, that's right.
And then after that, he waived his, he didn't fight his fate. You know, he waived all his appeals, telling the court that he wanted that the victims' families to have peace. Now, his sister did try to appeal on his behalf. Saying
his sister was Tina Thompson.
Right. And she tried to appeal on his behalf, saying that he wasn't competent to make that decision. But the court upheld his choice.
Mm-hmm.
And on September 22nd of 1995, Phillip Ingle was executed by lethal injection at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
You know what he had for his final meal?
What did he have for his last meal?
He had a medium rare steak, baked potato, tossed salad, and butter pecan ice cream.
Mm. But he did spend his final hours with his wife and their 2 young daughters and his mom.
Yeah.
His mom was named Juanita. And as he was wheeled into the death chamber, Phillip Ingle shouted out, "I'm going to heaven."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But when asked if he had any last words, Phillip Ingle said yes. The statement I would like to make is, I do not believe in capital punishment, even though I have chosen to end my appeals soon. The only reason I have done this is so that the
victims' families can find some peace and put an end to what has happened. He also said, during the last 4 weeks, I have felt more loved and more cared for than I have all my life. I've been getting letters from all over North Carolina and the United States telling me they love me, telling me of God's love for all of us, and I want to thank them. I want to thank my family, and I want to thank all my brothers on death row, who are some of the most finest people I have ever met anywhere.
Wow.
We are all human beings. We all make mistakes, and we are all sinners of flesh. When Jesus died, he took the sting away from death so that death does not sting anymore. He also said, I have repented my sins. I have been forgiven. I do not fear death now. I am not shaking, and I have been put to sleep with angels who are going to pick me up and take me to heaven. I forgive you and everyone, and I ask everyone who I have trespassed against to forgive me.
Right. You know, and there's a lot of stuff going on. You know, he's talking about small town, you know, terrible over there talking, and said, there was reports that one guy said, yeah, I think he ought to give him a fair trial and then hang him.
Yeah.
But I think one of the victims' daughters had actually said, you know, I hope he does, you know, find God and do this and go to heaven. That way he can tell my parents he's sorry for what he did to him.
Yeah.
Some heavy stuff, man.
Yeah, it's heavy. You know, this boy, he had some mental problems and with drinking and alcohol too, and I think all that just played together. It was just all a mixed bag of stuff in his head.
Very true, and it goes back to a lot of things we see from the very early childhood. This guy didn't really have a great chance.
No.
I mean, you try to kill yourself, 5 or 6 years old, you got some problems, and they should have been addressed then.
Yeah. Phillip Ingle requested that his body be cremated and his ashes scattered in South Mountain State Park in Burke County. And that's just right up
That's
the
right
road.
up the street.
Yeah, it's about 10 miles from where we're sitting right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've been there many times.
Yeah, and then I think the Davises are actually buried right over here at
Palm Tree Methodist Church.
Yeah, and that's just right down the street.
That's like 5-6 miles from right here where they're buried. So it's a crazy story, and
it's very local.
We've had this case requested to us many times. People want us to do the Davis case or the Willis case, but we put it all together and tried to get this together the best we could with the information that's available.
Right, which is not a lot.
And it's not. But we put it together, and I'll get this thing edited because we've had some mess ups.
Yeah,
trying to
get it right, man.
Yeah, we did.
I had all this, the guy that shot his wife, and then he passed away too, and then the poor fella that, and poor Joey James over there that just killed himself because of the grief from being ridiculed. I'm sure everybody was giving him the side eye and looking at him, because, basically, like you said, the law killed him.
Mm-hmm.
He just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah, I didn't hear or read of anything if Joey Melton's wife maybe tried to sue or civil sue the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department or something.
Shoulda.
Yeah. I don't know if she could got it.
I don't know.
Anything out there or not.
I don't either. It's sad. It's just a whole lot of sadness in this.
Yeah. But anyway, that is the story of Phillip Lee Ingle.
It is.
Yeah. He crisscrossed Cleveland County right here.
Yeah, they had a trial right here in Cleveland County.
Yeah, it was actually here in Cleveland County for both murders.
Yeah.
They wanted to change the venue, so they just went to the central location.
Right between them.
Yeah, they did. Crazy. All right, bud, we're going to get out of here, man.
Okay, let's roll.
We want everyone to be safe. Please be careful and always be aware of your surroundings.
Because the next episode could be about you.
This is the Crack House Chronicles.